Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Now What Next Steps podcast here at Malibu Pacific Church. Hey, if you haven't listened to this past week's sermon, please press pause now and listen to that sermon, because this podcast will make a little more sense after you listen to that sermon, but I'm not going to tell you how to live your life, you naughty little thing. Anyways, hey, everybody, it's me, Joel, and we have...
Andy, I'm here.
Hey, everybody, it's Pastor Andy. Do you like being called Pastor Andy?
Not really, to be honest with you. Just Andy's good.
Just Andy.
Andy's good.
Okay.
Thank you, though. I appreciate that. I am a pastor, but yeah, I'm Andy too.
Andy as well. I like that. Hey, so we are on our last sermon of the Missing Piece series. There's 4 sermons in there. If you haven't listened to them yet, Amy Pendergraph, and then Chad spoke, and then Andy did 2 of them as well at the end, and it was all talking about community and groups, how circles are better than rows. So the missing piece of your life, Andy, if people could hear that word, what's that missing piece in like the bottom line?
Yeah, you said it. Community. People, having that group of people that you're known and you know them, and we're so involved in each other's lives that when stuff happens, or we can encourage one another, we can help each other, and we can help each other grow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, just having that, who's, you say it all the time, who's your 2 a.m. people?
Exactly, your 2 a.m. friends.
Yeah.
When crap hits the fan, who do you call? And I love that you said that inside of the sermon, is that if you don't have community, something bad already happens. Can you repeat that?
Well, yeah, it's too late.
It's too late.
And the thing that you need the most, what we said yesterday, the thing that you need the most, you will desire it the least in the moment of crisis.
Yeah.
Secondly, could have spent a little more time on this. That's why we're doing the podcast. But
Yep.
when you're in crisis, you don't have time to build those relationships because you're in crisis. So you need to make that investment up front. So
Yep.
you have those 2 a.m. people, you have your group, you have your people who know you and can come alongside you. Because when crisis hits, we really, I don't know about you, but we push back, or we're not really listening. We're not listening to our parents. We're not listening to our friends. We're not listening to our spouses, boyfriend, girlfriend, roommates. Because when you're hurting, we isolate.
Totally.
What do you think about when you cut yourself? Well, my cut, I'm not thinking of somebody else. I'm not thinking build relationships. I'm not thinking about those things. I'm thinking, I'm bleeding. And so when we're hurting, we become very selfish, but rightly so. We're hurting.
Totally.
So that's the time we need people to jump in and come alongside us. And the last thing we want is an advice from our husband or our wife or a mom or a dad. We isolate, we push back. I'm hurting. And so when we need it the most, we seek it the least.
Totally. I was thinking of a couple weeks ago, my daughter was in the hospital, and all I was thinking about was getting her to the hospital, she's fine. Spoiler alert. Everything's great. But it was just that moment of like getting her there that I didn't think of anybody else. And I didn't think about my new, 5-month-old son, my 8-year-old daughter, or even my wife in that moment, because I just needed to get her to the doctor, right?
And rightly so.
Totally, rightly so. But the amazing
thing
thing about that, and when you were talking about that, when it's already too late and you don't have those people, I was just very blessed in that moment, because all of a sudden, 15 to 20 people reaching out. Can we get meals for your family? Can we take care of, do some childcare so Shannon can get down to the hospital? Can we do this? Can we do this? And people were driving down and, just celebrating Paisley. And I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah. And a good chunk of that was people from this church. And I was like, wow. Like, being part of a community and part of a church is very life-giving, and that's the way it's supposed to be. So
that's great. That's a great story. Yeah,
absolutely. So you had a couple of interviews that happened yesterday, which I think were all phenomenal. They're all tied for first place. But let's start with Craig Tease, just his conversation. I loved that you went into the celebrity sphere with him and just started saying, hey, you were on Poltergeist. It scared me as a kid.
It did.
I actually want to be like, is the Poltergeist curse real? I'm just kidding. I've asked him that before, and he's like, no. But there's some tragedy. Anyways, there's some things that happened. If you want to Google that.
Really?
Actually, yeah.
I didn't know that.
People passed away in bad ways, and they were like, it was an urban myth. It was filmed on an ancient burial ground, and so, and it wasn't. It was filmed in Simi Valley. Anywho. So... and then you're talking about just him and coming to church. And then he said that he was sitting up in the balcony and for 15 years. and you constantly say to people they sit in the back row for 3 years, and then they start serving. So when you were talking about that with him, and it took 15 years, do you think that's a good thing, or do you think that that's a bad thing that it took 15 years for him to step in?
Oh, I don't know. I can't judge that. That's
Yeah.
between him and Jesus.
Totally.
And well, I would think in that world that he lives in, everybody wants something from you.
Ooh.
And I think I've heard that he's been vulnerable in a few situations, and he got put out there, and
Yeah.
it was used against him.
Ah.
So I say all that just because I think somebody in his stature and his place,
Yeah.
he needs to take time
Totally.
to find out if this is a safe place. So
I love
whatever time I took.
I love that you said at the beginning right there. It's not me. It's not for me to judge, because that's not what we're doing here at MPC, and that's what I was kind of getting to.
Yeah.
Was that whether you've been sitting in the back row for 1 year, 6 years, 15 years on the balcony, we're just glad you're here, And
Absolutely.
I think the transformation is really going to come from Jesus in that for that next step. So,
And take as long as it needs to take for you to heal, to find out if this is a safe place. I find a lot of people coming from other churches who've been hurt in some way just need to sit and just sing songs and just worship and heal. And they just need to heal. And that's okay.
absolutely.
So whatever time it takes, we're here for you. And whenever you're ready to take that next step, awesome. We're ready.
Amazing. We had the privilege of just hanging out with him a little bit the day before, and he said a quote that really stuck with me. And this is kind of, I guess, behind the scenes, but not really. It's just a good conversation, and it kind of blew my mind. We were talking about the city of Malibu and him living in Malibu, and he said, we pay a lot of money to be in isolation. And the whole thing that John Hambrick in that interview was talking about the epidemic of isolation.
Yeah.
So now we're in a city where people are paying top dollar to be isolated.
Yeah.
So how do we do ministry with that? Where it's one thing, it's a pandemic of loneliness, but it's also I need to pay, whatever type of money to get this isolation because
Yeah.
I don't get it anywhere else.
Yeah. So I think the way we do ministry needs to be very relational. I still think, and if you go to our website, you'll see, is there something more? I think they know that there's more. And as a human being, you're still you're hungering for human connection.
Yeah.
They just don't know who to trust. And so I've been thinking about that. I think the question is, what are they isolating from?
Ooh. Yeah.
And maybe it's not so much relationships, but a safe place and people we can trust. Hollywood, whatever that means, the busyness, the paparazzi. So when they come here, I still think that we as a church have the very thing, the missing piece that they're looking for, which is intimacy, human relationships, interaction.
Absolutely. I love that interview, and if you haven't seen it yet or you want to watch it again, it's up on our YouTube channel right now. You can see it says Malibu Pacific Stories, and it's going to be right there. You can click on that on YouTube/Malibu Pacific Church, or you can find it on the Malibu Plus app, wherever you get your apps from. Awesome interview with Craig T right there, and I
Loved
really
his
think
vulnerability, and he was spot on.
spot on.
Yeah.
So listen to that, be encouraged by that. And so then you launch into the sermon right after that, even though the interview is part of the sermon. Let's be honest. It's not just like a chopped up kind of a thing. And you said Jesus did not launch the church for people with a common interest.
Yeah.
And I just loved that. I've heard you say it like one other time, maybe two other times, of like, golfing is for golfers. The mall is for maulers.
Yeah.
The motorcyclists clubs are for motorcycles. Church is for church people. But how do we break through that?
Yeah.
So-
and then our vision statement is creating a church for everybody.
Totally.
Wait a second. I thought
It's church
you're
for church
creating
people.
a church for church people, aren't you?
Yeah.
Because that's what it's for.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
what are some best common practices we could do to make sure that even though we have a common interest in Jesus or a hunger or that looking for more, if somebody's new to this, what would be some best practices for people who are listening to this podcast, who've been going to this church for however many years or months or days, to help include that everybody into this. So it's not just church for church people, but a church for everybody and every
Yeah,
story.
and the next line is Jesus created the church and launched the church for people who have a common problem. And so that's what we have in common with each other. We all have a common problem: sin,
Yeah.
our brokenness, and our need for God, a need for purpose. Where do I stand with God?
Yeah.
Who am I? And is it possible to know God personally, intimately? We're going to be talking about that this coming fall.
Yep.
So we all have a common problem.
Yeah.
And I think it's just recognizing that. And so are you asking, how do we help people know that it's for everybody?
Yeah, like what are some best practices for us
Yeah.
church people
Yeah.
who think we need to act like church people, whatever
Right.
that looks like? How do we not do that?
Well, and we're doing it every week.
Yeah.
That's why we're sharing so many stories. Every sermon,
Yeah.
I start with a common problem.
Yes.
And Jesus did it in Luke 15 with the story of the prodigal son. And he started with, have you ever lost anything? And religious leaders and the tax collectors and sinners both were on the bus with Jesus at that moment.
Yep.
And he started with a common feeling, a felt need.
Yeah.
I know what it feels like to lose something.
Yes.
And then he launched into the story of the prodigal son. So everything that we're doing here is to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And every sermon, every Sunday, we are solving a problem. And there's a principle from God's word that God wants us to learn and apply to our lives that is going to help with that common problem. So
Totally.
I think when we start there,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the same place that Jesus started, I think then we can realize, oh, this church is for me. These are my people. Because not because it's a common interest, it's because we all have a common problem, and I have that problem too.
Totally.
So basically, just spoiler alert, I'm starting with a common problem every sermon that we all,
What?
yeah, I know,
Oh my
that
gosh.
we're all, my goal, if the first 10 minutes I don't get everybody in the audience
Yes.
going, yeah,
Yeah.
I got that problem too,
Yeah.
and now I'm curious. But Jesus is a master communicator, and he did it this way. But also Hollywood discovered this.
Totally.
And I really encourage everybody to check out Donald Miller, Business Made Simple.
Okay.
If you have a product out there, or we have, I hate to use this language in the church, but we have something to offer.
Totally.
But if the church needs to be the number one place that communicates we have a problem.
Yeah.
But the church is also a solution to that problem.
Totally.
So I think that's how we can all say, yeah, these are my people.
Yeah.
I have that problem. We all do too.
We all do.
Okay, so now we all have a common problem. Now it's become a church for everybody.
There we go. So just being that vulnerable piece is really key
That's
to it.
right.
By
It's
saying, hey, me too.
Everything.
Yeah.
Me too.
Me as well.
Me too.
Yeah, there we go. And I love that you turned the corner. And I was talking to some people on the patio, and they're like, wow, Andy was so spicy today. And I was like,
Really?
what are you talking about? Like, it was
Yeah, I
just
think I'm going to get in trouble
Go.
this week. Yeah.
not even. It
Getting
was,
a phone call from somebody, whoever they are.
They are.
The they.
I thought you would have gotten an email by now.
Yeah.
I just
All
loved
quiet
it.
on the Western Front.
Gosh, you were like, all right, well, in this world, you'll have trouble.
Yeah.
Amen. Your life's going to be trouble. It's going to suck. And people,
pray.
I could just feel the tension in the room.
Yeah.
Like, do we laugh at this? Do we not laugh at this? And then when you're going
Oops.
into, I pity the fool who doesn't, you did Mr. T in there. I was laughing so hard because it was like, yeah, just take pity. Like, be a part of a group. Like, it was this moment of just real authentic communication where it wasn't.
How do
I
I
know.
shake you, though? I mean, literally, I'm thinking
Yeah.
don't call us in 15 years and saying I have a problem with my 15-year-old.
Yeah.
I don't know if maybe we could edit this part right now.
Yeah.
When you had a chance to have them in Sunday school all these years.
Totally.
And we will never, this is a Reggie Joiner thing, and this is from Orange in the curriculum that we're using. We will never be able to outdo Disney.
Amen.
We will never do it. We will never be able. But Disney cannot outdo relationships.
Absolutely. They cannot.
So I know we catch this also, and our children's ministry is very fun. And when they go into the 4th and 5th grade or junior high or even high school, it's like, oh, this isn't so much fun. I don't want to go. No, we want to do as much fun as we can. We really do. We
do.
work really hard, but it will never be as much fun as a roller coaster ride or something. It just never will be.
True.
And the people who take here in Malibu these vacations to incredible places around the world,
Because they have to leave Malibu.
They have
Just
to
remember,
leave Malibu to
go somewhere else. Just
So we will never be able to outspend your $20,000-$30,000 vacation.
Nope.
But you will never be able to outdo our small group. So even when a student, or
Yep.
it's a big shift, I think, also for 4th and 5th graders
Uh-huh.
to really have that focus on the small group and have a conversation. This wasn't as much fun. You're right. It's not, and I trust that you're going to be going on a $30,000 vacation. You're going to have fun in this life. I'm not worried about that.
Exactly.
But what we're doing in these 30 minutes at youth group on Wednesday night, sitting in a circle talking about some stuff, that we're putting an anchor in their hearts that when they're 35 and struggling in life, they're going to remember that conversation. And
Absolutely.
a godly principle was put into them on Wednesday night, and they were bored, but they will remember it.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to have fun. We play games and do a bunch of stuff.
Totally.
But really, really what is happening, I can't overemphasize this enough, is that your kids are in a small group with an adult learning a principle from God
Yeah.
that I believe the Holy Spirit will bring it up when they're 35, want to leave their marriage,
Yep.
2 crying babies, and they hate their job.
Yeah.
And God is going to just wake that principle up and save them, save that marriage, and save the relationship. So, and then they're going to teach that to their kids.
Yeah.
So I'll give up a little bit of fun. We're all for fun here.
We love
We
fun.
are.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is a small group.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And instill that at a young age too, because
Yeah.
I remember some of my biggest conversations I've ever had in my life, in my junior high and high school years, was always in a small group, like asking the really, really difficult questions. Because you can't always turn to your parents. You know, that's the other thing too, is that though you most people can, like there's possible relationship struggle or a missing parent. I get all the different variables in there. There's just sometimes you need somebody who's almost like a bigger brother.
Yeah, that's good.
Or sister,
Yeah.
or somebody that you just know is wise that can really mentor you and pour into you. There's this amazing study called Sticky Faith that's happening at Fuller Youth Institute out in Pasadena, FYI, led by Kara Powell and Brad Griffin. And they say that a sticky faith, for a faith to stick into a person, into a student, they need 6 points of contact from adults. Like they need to have 6 different relationships that are not just in their own peer or age group, but points of contact inside of a church for their faith to stick. And the reason for that is that they really, really honestly believe in what they've seen with their analytics and all that kind of stuff too, is that they're seeing that students don't just want to be talked at, they want to be talked to.
That's right. Yeah.
And so we're constantly doing that,
Yeah.
I think, with they're being talked at school from time to time. They're being talked at by parents. You need to do this. It's more task-oriented versus talked with. And when you ask somebody to sit down at the table and invite them to engage into a conversation, I think there's just more worth and more value that happens there.
Absolutely.
And so when you have those 6 points of contact, they really believe that this is like a church community for them. So we want to encourage you to serve, to go to the children's ministry, read those stories. We have an amazing thing called Orange Curriculum that is easy to read and life-changing for students.
Yeah.
Head on down with Stuart, our new youth pastor, and hang out and be in group with 4th and 5th graders, junior hires, high schoolers. We'll pray for you while you're there because it is...
You will grow in your faith like no other time when you are serving in junior high ministry.
Absolutely. I had the pleasure of being a youth pastor
Like
for 14
no other
years.
time, yeah.
And it was the best. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. No, it was the best. It really is the best
It's
of
the
times.
most rewarding, but it's probably the most difficult
It
also.
totally
I feel
is.
like I am not getting through. These kids are not listening. Yeah. But
And then all of a sudden, there's just that one glimmer of hope, and you know
Yeah.
what? They were listening the entire time.
that's right.
And so I think more than half the battle is just showing up. And I think that is what you were getting to with signing up for a group. Show up.
Show up.
Show
Just
up.
Show up.
Show up. You never know what's going to happen. But if you don't show up and you create that barrier of not showing up, that's where isolation goes.
Yeah.
And it turns into a habit that keeps happening over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And so I think my last question is, how long have you been in groups, and have they changed your life personally?
Oh, absolutely. Same thing.
Yeah.
Junior high school.
Sweet.
Youth ministry. My dad's church, extremely influenced by the youth pastors. Took the time. Always, we were even doing group time then. But then the biggie was at seminary.
Amazing.
We formed a group just because we wanted to. Let's get together, a bunch of us. I think there were 12, 14 couples during the seminary, and we met for those 3 years at somebody's house that lived off campus. And they are, to this day, some of our best friends.
Amazing.
Yeah. And we have been doing group ever since.
Yeah.
So influential, oh my goodness. They have been friends, encouragers. They still come and visit us in California or call all the time and stayed connected. The bond that happens in 2 years in a small group, meeting consistently over time, there's been a ton of studies over this. When the group breaks up, the relationships don't stay. The bonding is still connected to those people.
Totally.
And even though, plenty of studies here, even though the group is no longer meeting together, the bond, the intimacy, the connectedness that happened in those 2 years of vulnerability and sharing life together, that stays with you for the rest of your life. It's amazing. It is that powerful.
Awesome.
Yeah. So it's been everything. Yeah.
That's so good. So you see firsthand from Andy, he's also in group. That's one of the things. It's not just like, well, I did it, and then you guys, now you go do it.
No,
it's not.
The cook needs to eat what he's serving.
Oh, there we go.
You better be doing it. Yeah.
Yep.
If I don't want to work somewhere that I wouldn't actually want to be at.
Right?
I'm here serving.
Yes.
I was here in the morning, just putting chairs out, getting the tents up. I would do that. You're not doing this because I'm getting paid for this right now. In my mind, I'm here to serve. I'm not the pastor of the church. I'm doing it because I love this place. And when am I putting my serving time in? And so, but yeah, if I'm not in group, I can't ask you to do it.
Absolutely. I get asked the question, if you weren't on staff, would you actually attend Malibu Pacific Church? And you know what I've said? I've been attending this church for over 15 years because this is my wife's home church too. And great. So of course I would.
Yeah.
We came to church here when I worked at a different church.
Yeah.
This was my safe place to go to. And so it's just a really fun, a great place to be at. And in this next season here, we want to hear from you. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or hand gestures, celebrations, some wins, some cool things that are going on here, please contact us. You can contact me, Joel, at MalibuPacific.church, Joel, Joel, at MalibuPacific.church, and would love to have a conversation with you and hear some of those wins or need prayer about any of those types of things. With that said, new podcasts come out every single week. I'm just so thankful that you're listening to this podcast. Hit that subscribe button so it downloads every single week and it's ready to go in your car or wherever you're listening to your podcasts. Also, hit that share button. If you know somebody who might be having some issues or some troubles with loneliness, I think this could be a good conversation or icebreaker to start off with. Have them listen to the sermon and then maybe even deep dive into the podcast and have a conversation with them. Remember, don't do life alone. God did not create us to do life alone. Even God at the very beginning when he created Adam was like, whoa. We need an Eve.
Not good for man to be alone.
Exactly.
Created community. That's
exactly. Right. So with that said, we hope you have an awesome week. And again, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or hand gestures, reach out, and we'd love to hear from you. Again, see you later, everybody. Bye.
Take care.